that we do have, oh, I was just about to say, thanks, Vicky. We are wanted to let everybody know we are recording so that people who haven't been able to attend will get to, and the recording for the most part shows the speakers and the slides and that kind of thing, and that if we try not to do it of everybody's faces and that sort of thing. So welcome everybody. My name is Vicky Bungay, and I am the director here at the Capacity Research Unit and a professor in the School of Nursing. And I'm very excited to welcome everybody to our fall seminar series here at Capacity. And before I do our introductions, I just would like to acknowledge that the Capacity Unit and much of the work that we do is located on the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish Nation. And it's with deep gratitude that we recognize the stewardship of the land. And I would invite people, if you would like to share where you are and your location, you can do that and acknowledge the land that you're on. You can do that in the chat if you're so inclined. I personally am coming today from, sorry about that. I'm coming to you today from the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of the Still Okanagan Nation. So I'm very excited today to introduce our speakers who have so graciously volunteered to come and talk to us. First, they'll each tell you a little bit about themselves, but I want to welcome and thank you to Diana Ospina, who is the Senior Manager for Surrey Local Immigration Partnership and Collaboration, and to Dr. Shahin KAssam, who is doing a postdoctoral fellowship with us in Capacity, and they're going to share with us today their fabulous partnership and the work that they're doing. And so without further ado, I will hand it over to them to introduce themselves and take it from there. So thank you so much, and over to you both.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vicky. And I just want to thank all of you here today just for taking the time to come and to join in today's co-presentation. And a big thank you to our co-presenter, Diana Ospina, for also taking time out today and just being part of this presentation, which centers on a body of work funded by a SSHRC Partnership Engagement Grant, which allowed us to team up and engage in a collaborative process that gathered the experiences of accessing services amongst women impacted by forced migration. So yes, a special thank you to Vicky for being our principal investigator on this grant, and that just gave us so many opportunities and just has opened up a whole bunch of new possibilities to connect the nursing sector and the health sector with the settlement sector, which is what we're going to talk about today. Here we go. Before we start, I would also just like to acknowledge the lands upon which Diana and I have lived and worked upon. And I wanted to highlight the many groups of Coast Salish people and mention just how the unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation actually translates into the people of the inlet. The reconciliation work that is currently being done within this nation includes involving the Tsleil-Waututh community members in the rebuilding of their culture and the restoration and the protection of their once abundant and really once thriving spaces of natural resources. So it is a really great example of community-based interaction with First Nations in reconciliation work, where we have the opportunities to unlearn and learn what land and cultural stewardship means to the diverse Coast Salish communities, while also just really questioning, how we as settlers are participating in these reconciliation processes. So today really is an exciting opportunity for Diana and I to talk about how we approach community-based work targeting women impacted by forced migration. And so we're going to start by defining the purpose of our time together today, followed by who we are and where we both come from and what we bring to this partnership. We will bring some context and definitions just to guide our co-presentation. And then we're going to just touch on the connection of this work to nursing, since this actually has been a question that has commonly been raised within conversations in public spaces on our work with women impacted by forced migration. And then we will describe just how we became a team and developed and moved our shared ideas into a research project. And then we'll talk about our research process as well as some of the key findings. And then we'll end with describing what we are currently doing just to mobilize these findings in a meaningful way. So our purpose today is to really highlight our partnership between the community settlement sector and the academic and nursing sector, where we aim to contribute to examining the experiences of women impacted by forced migration and how they connect to systems here in Canada that foster settlement. So this shared interest of examining women's experiences evolved over time into this dynamic team of researchers and collaborators and research participants and settlement organizations, all of whom were very involved in various ways during the research process. So as Vicky mentioned, my name is Dr. Shahin KAssam, and I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the UBC School of Nursing Capacity Research Unit, and I'm the research co-lead. I situate myself as a first-generation Canadian, with my parents immigrating here to Canada, and they're originally from different parts of Africa. One side of my family from Kenya, and the other side from South Africa. And I come from a clinical public health nursing background, where I was clearly drawn to working with women who were marginalized by poverty, by their migrant status, having limited social supports, while also dealing with the experiences of racism and their histories of exposure to gender-based violence. So when I became connected to the settlement sector during my doctoral program, I realized quickly that my concerns were also shared with many of the settlement leaders that I spoke to, which led to meeting our community co-lead, who's here today, Diana Ospina, and I'll hand it over to you, Diana, to continue our introductions.
Thank you so much, Shahin, and also Vicky. As you've mentioned, my name is Diana Ospina. I'm also a first-generation settler on these lands, the lands of the Coast Salish speaking peoples. My parents immigrated here from Colombia, and they definitely encountered many of the challenges, but also the opportunities that so many immigrants have experienced in the last, at this point, what are we looking at, over 100 years? I have been working in the settlement sector for over 12 years now in a number of capacities, including language instruction and community engagement. As such, I've seen the great benefit of settlement services for people, particularly women who are really supporting their families as they navigate their settlement journey. That being said, I've been able to see that there are definitely obstacles for women who are trying to access services. I've heard, anecdotally many issues, and I think that is one of the main reasons that I was so happy to be able to collaborate on this research project. First, because it's a community-based research project, but also because of the connection to the health and wellness sectors, to make sure that we're kind of looking at things and informing each other of all the issues and potential supports and solutions that can be offered. And if I could have the next slide, I believe. Yeah, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to also thank all of the collaborators. What's really wonderful about this is that these are folks that are deeply committed to the work of supporting newcomers of all backgrounds, all immigration statuses. They have maybe they have a focus on different parts of the settlement journey. So settlement in general, information, employment, mental health. These are folks that have combined. I'm just looking at the slide and I'm going, wow, there's just a lot of experience in the room and a lot of understanding of the nuances of settlement and program design. So we're really blessed to have Jenny Lamb from Options, Adrian Bale from Mosaic, Mark Larrivee, who's up at Impact North Shore, as well as Ustaf Dacker. They've just been fantastic and very generous collaborators with all their knowledge. I think I can also say hi to Kim, who's in the room, one of the first folks to get started on this project. And also, I know she may not be here, but Jessica is also someone who was at DIVERSEcity, who really supported this work and got those initial steps going. And I was very blessed to be able to pick up the project from where she left off. And it's been amazing so far.
Thank you so much, Diana. So the word, just diving right in, so the word immigration or migration is interchangeably used across migration language and discourse. But the concept of forced migration tends to be pooled into populations who migrate from their home countries by choice. So we, in this project, we draw on the global definition of forced migration as described by the International Organization for Migration, or the IOM, where they define it as people moving from their homes to escape persecution, war, conflict, human rights violations, or natural disasters. But what the IOM definitions don't seem to really explicitly consider is just this concept of coercion, where women specifically are forced to move for reasons that are less visible and less talked about, and stemming from gender-based violence, such as forced marriage and human and sex trafficking. So as a result of most international and national policies, forced migration tends to be identified as those living with refugee or refugee claimant statuses. But to add to just the many gray areas within these policies are those individuals who are living with international student status or temporary migrant working status, and those who just don't have any citizenship or migration documents. So if we look at the global numbers, forced migration is exponentially rising. These are the numbers that we know of right now and are likely underestimated since, as the World Health Organization has very clearly and recently stated, that our data sets are very limited on who are forced to migrate, who are undocumented, who are seeking asylum, who are being trafficked, who are being forced into marriage, and so on. So we know that the number of people forced to migrate has doubled in the last 10 years, but we also know that these numbers are exploding pretty much every year. So for example, and there's supposed to be a line through the almost 90 there, but less than a year ago in another seminar I spoke at, we were sitting at 90 million people who were forced to migrate. And now we are sitting at least 108 million worldwide. So if we look closer at the breakdown of this number, we will find that at least 50% of these numbers are women and girls. So forced migration is directly connected to health, where not having access to effective health care is indeed a human rights violation. And with nurses being direct care providers, being leaders, being educators and researchers, women impacted by forced migration is a population that nurses address across the healthcare spectrum, across provision environments. So one of the many roles of nurses is connecting patients and clients to the right resources at the right time, while also considering, their health and well-being, as well as the health determinants that are influencing their health and well-being. But these types of skills and nurses' roles involved in population-based activities and care provision are often overlooked and undervalued. And women impacted by forced migration are thereby left to self-navigate entry into health and social service systems. So if we look at some of these health and well-being impacts out of over 15 million women and girls worldwide, it has been loosely documented that 70% have been exposed to gender-based violence. And I say loosely just because we know that 70% is an underestimation, since the experience of gender-based violence is heavily stigmatized in many countries and in many cultures, which basically silence women and girls from talking about it. In Canada, women and girls who are of color and living with forced migration statuses also experience racism in different ways. So for example, women coming to Canada with high levels of education and work experience are overrepresented within low-paid and domestic jobs, requiring limited skills and exposure to risk and exploitation and instability. So being exposed to these work experiences in turn negatively impacts physical and mental and spiritual well-being and health, where women are at higher risk for chronic health issues like higher blood pressure, diabetes, chronic respiratory conditions, depression, and anxiety. So taking all of this in and taking what I started to just really understand within the literature and through my doctoral research, I started just engaging with people and networking with settlement sector leaders. And through our discussions, there was this realization of these shared concerns for the well-being of women impacted by forced migration, and just how they were connecting, to settlement and health systems just upon arriving into Canada. So last year, I had the opportunity to meet Diana, and we worked on a plan that was supported by both of our areas of work. So for me, as a postdoctoral research fellow, I was and continue to be supported in many ways by my supervisor, Vicky, and the Capacity Research Unit. And for Diana, she was and continues to be supported by the nonprofit settlement organizations that she's part of. So that's DIVERSEcity Community Resource Services and the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership. And so these supports led to just being successfully funded by a SSHRC Partnership Engagement Grant, and creating this team led by Diana and myself as co-leads, and a team of collaborators, Adrian, Jenny, Mark, and Utsav. So through the funding, we jointly developed goals to steer our research project. And the first and foremost sort of overarching goal was to just really inform and build on the current settlement service provision approaches and pathways and policies, specifically with women's lived and living experiences. It was also to develop these new and existing partnerships between nonprofit settlement organization and the UBC School of Nursing and Capacity Research Unit. We also wanted to respond directly to the community needs centered on women's experiences of forced migration and settlement. And we also wanted to sort of co-create and co-foster these mutual shared experiences and exchanges of knowledge centered on women and their experiences of impact forced migration and their experiences of seeking settlement here into Canadian society. So these goals were steered by our these goals essentially steered our ethics application, which was also collaboratively worked upon, where we refined our strategies to ensure inclusion of languages and inclusion of races and varying migration statuses. And also just to really ensure the safety and the confidentiality of the women that we would be recruiting and speaking to. So our collaborative processes included this team of collaborators that Diana talked about earlier, as we already mentioned, and we gathered and met with this team every month to update them on our strategies and just to get their feedback to ensure inclusion of the different groups of women and to ensure the safe recruitment process that was also practical for each settlement organization. So these meetings were one of our integrated knowledge mobilization approaches to this research project. And during each meeting, we would also we would look ahead and we would brainstorm ways that we would like to share these findings once they started to come forward and emerge. And we just really wanted to be purposeful, and we wanted it to be meaningful as well as feasible to the settlement sector and to the women forced that were participating in sharing the findings, as well as in circling the findings back, just to ensure that the women who were impacted by forced migration would benefit. So after Diana talks today about the findings of this project, we will look a little bit at what we have done so far to meaningfully mobilize the findings from this project. And I just want to quickly add that, I always look forward to these week or monthly meetings, just because I know that settlement is a small but mighty sector that is, just passionate, but always has, they have their full plates to also contend with and work with. And so there are not a lot of opportunities to connect and share experiences and swap ideas. So I've always just really enjoyed listening and just really witnessing and partaking in these rich discussions and just that inter and intra-disciplinary flow of knowledge sharing that takes place. So within our team meetings, each collaborator identified the languages that were most prevalent within the women they served, which informed the translation of our research documents. These discussions of languages were also coupled with discussions on what races were also under-researched and needing to more inquiry into. So we then jointly strategized and carried out our recruitment processes. Data collection involved in-person meetings with our collaborators, managers, and caseworkers who connected us to women interested in participating and sharing their stories. And then we also had interpreters arranged to be present during the interviews at the preference of the participating woman. Confidentiality forms were also signed by all involved in the recruitment and data collection processes. And then data analysis was also done collaboratively. So I'll actually hand it over to Diana to describe her experience of this process.
Oh, thank you. So the data analysis experience was really eye-opening. I think from day one, I told Shahin, I'm not an expert on research. I don't understand every single type of research method. But, if you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to give it my best shot. I really found that this method of looking at the analysis of these narratives from the women was a really fantastic way to kind of drill down into some of the issues that they were experiencing as they began their settlement. It was really interesting to see, these women who were in different places in their settlement journey, and how to take all of that information and start to find themes, commonalities, very unique pieces as well, how to manage that data, how to work on it together. I think it was very well supported. Shahin really had everything laid out for us so that we could do this work in the most effective way possible, always being mindful of the fact that we're not experts, but in the research, but we do have some expertise in some of the issues and the challenges that the participants were experiencing. So just a really fantastic experience for me on my part.
Great.
So I think now, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just thanking you. Thank you.
Oh. I think now I'd like to go ahead and share just some of the findings. We have shared this, as Shahin will talk about, in the community. And it's been very interesting. It's been confirming some of the things that we knew, but also shedding light on a few things that are ever evolving, as we know that, in the last 40 years, we have different groups that have been coming in for, humanitarian reasons, and as well under this this frame of forced migration. So in terms of who was in the study, we had 9 participating women. They ranged in age from 24 to 56. And what was really, really interesting is that they've been living in Canada, some for 2 months and some for up to 4 years. The languages that were represented were Ukrainian, Tigrinya, Spanish, and Dari. Just go to the next slide. Thank you. It was also good to see the status that folks had upon arriving in Canada and upon being part of the project. So the countries that they lived in after leaving the home, their home experiences were anything ranging from 1 month to 13 years, living in different situations, including in refugee camps. Migrant status upon landing in Canada were also diverse: refugee claimants, and undocumented folks as well. And then at the time of the project, we had folks who were on work permits and permanent residents. Next slide, I'll just bring mine up as well. The education level was everywhere from high school to master's degrees. Definitely, most had been able to access post-secondary. And employment status, we found that 1/3 of the participants were finding jobs that weren't commensurate to the experience, the education that they had previously. And next slide, please. Thank you. So the family composition, so we had 67% of the women were living with their dependent children, and 33 had no children. And then also very similar, 67% were married and 33% were single, separated, or widowed. And for those that were married, their own words were to identify their partners as husbands. Next one. So in terms of the children, the children's ages, there were 15 children attached to the women in the project, and they aged from 0 to 18 years old. So we had 13% that were just little young toddlers and prenatal, and then we had 27% that were adult children, and then the majority of them were 60% school-aged children. So for the women, one of the questions that we asked was, what's the experience that they had post-migration in these areas of social support, receiving services, and feeling their own agency and capacity. So in terms of social support, the women really reported that their network really was a good source of support. So we had women helping other women, family members were supporting them in different ways, including financial. For those that had that opportunity, volunteering was very important to them to connect with community as well as other community gatherings where they all speak the same language. So they could have that feeling of comfort and being at home. In terms of receiving services, they reported that they felt cared for. It was very important to them to be connected to these resources, specifically because they needed support with intimate partner violence, jobs, and wanting to get some legal support and legal aid. Also, accessing online courses at the time was very helpful for those, especially where they needed childcare. And the services that they received that helped them to, protection from violence was very important to them because they felt that it was free of stigma and allowed that to be a positive connection between police and transitional housing. Also, in terms of agency, they really felt a sense of pride that as they learned, they were able to support other women and share their learnings with them, and be advocates in their communities. But also, they shared, sometimes they just figure things out on their own, and so they were able to do that as well. So in terms of how they were accessing the supports that are available to them, we had like two themes come up. Some were like self-directed, self-initiated, and some showed that they were depending on their network. So the self-initiated pieces were attaching themselves and finding information on social media. They reported Facebook, and Viber and Indeed to be good platforms. Word of mouth was very important. And I think that goes back to the fact that they were meeting in community, different women's groups, connecting very closely with their settlement worker, often someone who spoke the same language as them. And again, that piece about being self-reliant and resourceful. In terms of supporting accesses through their dependence on their network. Many reported that their husband's work colleagues, their husband's network, even some relationships from the husband in terms of the home country were very helpful. And they also did mention where it was available, extended family in Canada was quite supportive as well.
Thanks so much, Diana. So the overarching recommendations from women in this study, in this project, was to improve timely access to services in 3 different areas. So the first was programming, where there is this need for more women-centered capacity building opportunities that provide opportunities for employment within their skilled areas. Access to English classes and to employment skill building that lead to being employed were priorities for women. But childcare also needs to be provided just to offset those parenting responsibilities that women often shoulder. And then there's this access to transportation, so women and their children can safely engage with food banks, which are usually located just far away from where women are housed, was also a recommendation. Access to housing that is safe for women, so ensuring that they are safe and protected within their home from different forms of violence, including interpersonal violence, was also recommended by these women. The second area of recommendations looked at mental health services. So providing services for children as soon as they entered Canada was described as needed, especially for those exposed to different forms of violence, such as family violence or just to migration-related trauma and violence, like such as witnessing war and conflict. And then the third area of recommendations looked at this timely connection to resources. So just really meeting women where they're at, rather than providing this wave and really tsunami of overwhelming amount of information right away was recommended. Providing resources upon entry to Canada within their spoken languages, other than English and French, to just really help overcome their fears of this new culture, this new world, really this new life, and this new language that they were also trying to quickly learn, was also recommended. So once these findings emerged and we had shared and discussed them with our team of collaborators, we finalized how we would meaningfully share these findings with knowledge users who were the settlement teams within each participating settlement organization. And we named this knowledge sharing activity the Roadshow. And I want to credit Diana for that. I think it just really reflected, what we were intending to do with this new knowledge. And basically what that meant was coordinating with each participating settlement organization to attend one of their settlement team meetings, and to share the project and to share the findings, but also to engage in group discussions that would just really create this space for the teams to share amongst each other what their thoughts and their ideas were and their strategies. So the three areas of discussions that we've been focusing on that came from the data, it was enhancing employment opportunities amongst women, enhancing service provision access, and just really mapping out further research priorities centered on women affected by forced migration. So our current status of this knowledge mobilization work is that we have so far conducted 2 of the 4 roadshows, but I'll turn it over to Diana just to speak a little bit more to what we're currently doing and what some of our future plans are for sharing this, for knowledge sharing.
Yes, so that's right. So we've conducted 2 out of our 4 roadshows. The idea being that we were going to go and visit the groups and the teams from each of our collaborators' agencies. And I guess the short-term goal of that was to compile the discussions and share across all of the different organizations. So we had a really good, robust set of questions that arose from the analysis of the data that we are sharing with all the settlement agencies, so we can pull that together and they can use it to glean learnings and information from each other as well. Long term, as we said, is to inform any upcoming collaborative research and make sure that we're including the including the recommendations of the women who were part of the project as well, and see how can that impact, improve, reinforce the good things that are happening in the settlement agencies. And then, of course, we want to take that further because there are much more than just 4 agencies doing this work. So we will be presenting findings to the attendees of the Pathways to Prosperity Canada conference. That conference is very much geared towards the settlement sector and researchers and funders and service providers within that sector. So we're going to have a collaborative workshop in where we're going to share our findings and discuss the process of how our experience can maybe help settlement agencies and researchers look at the benefits and the details of how to do this community-based research. And also we will be having a poster presentation very specifically on that piece, the community-based research. So trying to amplify our findings, but also talk about the experience that we had in this partnership.
Great, thanks so much, Diana. Yeah, so I guess before we end, we would like to acknowledge, the settlement teams, the caseworkers, and the managers that have participated in this work out of DIVERSEcity, Mosaic BC, Options BC, and Impact North Shore. As Diana did mention earlier, we also want to acknowledge Jessica Forster Broomfield and Kim Tan, who did play an important and influencing role in our initial stages in just moving our ideas forward into this project. And of course, Dr. Vicky Bungay and the Capacity Research Unit team, including Patricia Tate and Phoebe Long, who have just provided unwavering structural, interdisciplinary, and relational support. Great, yeah. So thank you so much for listening to us, and we'd love to take questions. And I wonder, do I perhaps switch off the share, or what do you think, Vicky?
Yeah, so we can all see each other. Let's do that. Thank you, Diana and Shahin, for just a fantastic presentation and really being leaders in inclusive and ethical community-based research. And so thank you for all of that work. So we thought that the easiest way to do some questions and answers is if people want to type it into the chat. If you have questions or things you'd like to hear more about, or comments, if you could type them into the chat, and then I can navigate. Alternately, if you want to raise your hand and come on screen and ask the questions, that's great as well. So I will just open it up to anybody have any questions or comments for our speakers here today. I'm
Kim Tan here. So happy to be part of this presentation, and so really grateful for all the good work that came through this project. I just offer some comments about, I really appreciate the idea of the roadshow, and that in terms of research dissemination and wonderful research findings, recommendation is always a very important part of any research project, but that you're able to bring that along and gather more information as you share that out. I think it's fantastic. So I wish you best of luck, especially with sharing it out at the conference coming up, sharing that more widely. But good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thanks for coming here today as well, and thanks for your support.
Yeah, and I think it's a really great observation. Being able to share within the sector is important, but we're also looking forward to opportunities to share our findings like this one with the health sector and strengthening those links and bridges, because sometimes we're working in like solitudes and we just don't, we have a sense of what's going on and we try to make informed referrals, etc., but we don't know the details and the nuances that can help support the way we work together for this particular population of migrant women. And as we all know, if we can support women, you're supporting an entire family. So important.
Absolutely. If I may, just one last comment too, Diana, you had mentioned that part of this whole process also, to be able to share the experiences and the successes of such a community-based project. I think back to your point of sharing it out to all the various partner groups is really important, so that it encourages both sides to consider more community-based projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's just this real push, I think now, and perhaps even awareness about, you know, just the benefits of community-based research. And if there isn't awareness, there should be. I think that there's just so much richness when it comes to knowledge exchange and development, and just to just marry different experiences and expertises rather together. That it's just a real phenomenal experience just to be part of it, and to know that it can and it will, you know, eventually trickle down to the populations being served. I think that that is sort of the overarching goal that we're aiming for.
Great. We have a couple of questions. I'm just going to go through them. We have a question about sharing the PowerPoint, if you'd be willing to share the PowerPoint afterwards, and what perhaps if people are interested, they could email the capacity unit or Shahin, and we can figure out how to circulate information in that kind of way. And then we have a couple of questions. One is that what were your analysis methods? Could you tell us a little bit more about how you did the actual data analysis?
So if you want, Dan, I'll jump in, and then you can also put some of your thoughts in for sure, please. But we went into this research project with a narrative inquiry approach, which basically looks at, you know, what are the stories that we're seeing within the interviews and the experiences that women are talking about. And so we went through, we actually, Diana and I had a lot of conversations in terms of, you know, where are we coming from as people and as our minds? Like, what are we actually looking for here? So just this idea of intersectionality as a theoretical approach, and gender-based analysis plus as a theoretical approach from Diana's perspective, we talked about that and what it meant when we were actually going through some of these stories, and then applying it to the whole approach of narrative inquiry. So it's a dynamic and complex process, but not undo it. It's doable. You know, Diana and I again just had a lot of conversations. We had a lot of Zoom calls. We even got some one-on-one time together, just sifting through the interviews together, and teasing out what was it from a settlement perspective and from a nursing health perspective that we were interested, that aligned with our project goals and our interests. So I hope that that sort of helps with that question.
I might also just add that in terms of working with community agency or organization, I think don't shy away from it. Yes, I wasn't aware of this kind of research, but I think if you leave space for your partner to ask questions, to kind of mull things over a little bit, explaining things, I think you'll find that community partners can be a great you know, a great partner, I guess, in this work of research and doing the analysis, which I thought was an amazing piece to let us be a part of the analysis of the narratives that we were gathering. And I know Shahin said we had lots of Zoom calls and lots of meetings, but they were all very fruitful. They're all really aligned with the work that we were both doing, especially the work that I was doing. It was all very informative to everything I was doing. So there is that real, because of the way the research was designed, it really made sense for us to put that kind of time and effort into it for those great outcomes that we're getting at the end. So just thinking about not only the research method, but the research question and aligning that with the right community partner.
Great, thank you. We have another question that is, acknowledging how great the work is and asking if you've noticed any type of policy shift since you started this work in any areas. Who wants to field that one?
Well, I would say that not yet. Definitely a newer study. We are taking it to the best place possible where it can inform policy, which is Pathways to Prosperity Conference. As I said, there's going to be research there, researchers there, funders there, and service providers from across Canada. So this is a perfect place. Also, that's a place where you make those connections with not just kind of the direct funding relationship, but looking at the folks who are, for a lack of a better word, at the back office, at the policy development side of the funders that we don't always have access to as service delivery providers. So not yet, but it's definitely something that we want to contribute towards, and also connect our work and our findings with other folks who are looking to change policy. So I would say, at least from our end, that's where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll echo what you're saying, Diana. And I think one of the things that's come forward from our roadshows as well is that each one, at each one, the teams that we've talked to have also talked about the policy and said, that, yeah, we need to talk at policy levels here too, in terms of, what can we do and what can we actually, how can we impact things at a greater level, greater structural level? And so, yeah, it is new, like what Diana was saying. We just, started all of this last year. And so we're very hopeful, that change is slow, but hopefully seeds can be planted at this point, and grow slowly. And yeah, that we have many policy hopes and dreams. So we'll stay tuned.
That's great. Thank you. I have a question, but I don't want to take it from anybody's spot. If I'm just looking to see, you have to be looking around the screen. I guess one of the things, just in listening to this amazing amount of work and effort that went into being inclusive and, and recognizing there isn't a lot of work in this area that is as inclusive and engaged in the way that that you've undertaken it. What's next? Do you have other research studies in interest, or where do you given the richness of what you have and learned, do you have plans to do more research together and that sort of thing? And if so, what do you think? What's next? What's coming up?
So, and that was part of the intention of these roadshows, was to really figure out, okay, what is next from here? We have these set of recommendations that women have provided to us. What does settlement need, out of this, and what could we actually do? What's missing as well from this? And so, one of the things that we really would love to do is actually build on, the stories that we have currently harnessed. And so really gathering more data is definitely something that we would love to understand, to create more understandings on the contextualities that women are facing, in terms of their migrant statuses, their backgrounds. One of the things that we weren't able to accomplish within this study or this project is gathering information from certain communities, such as those from Northern Sudan or Southern Sudan. We have a bunch of different communities that we weren't able to access in terms of different languages. So I think in sort of being intentional about inclusion, and that being a real pillar of this work, I think that seems to be the next step, to sort of the natural next step. And that's also coming out from our road shows as well, as, okay, we need to know more. We'd love to understand more what women have to say. And so I think just really centering this work around more stories would be the next step. How about you, Diana? What do you think?
I absolutely agree with what you have just said. It really is the next step, and we have definitely heard that during our road shows. But also, I would say, just more generally, the next step is for me personally to really just advocate for this kind of work. The community-based research model has been an amazing experience, especially for someone who in the past has been involved in research that was, as I said to you, Shahin, very extractive. You know, people fly in, get what they need, and then you never hear from them again, and it just feels very inequitable. So just going to different folks in the sector and saying, here's been my experience, here's why it's been a benefit, here's, you know, how they're listening to our concerns, and really collaborating on these projects is definitely one of my next steps, to encourage people to engage in more community-based research, especially from the community side, which sometimes feels a little overwhelmed, and just say, no, it's worth it. You really get great results out of it.
That's great. That's yeah, it's incredible, you know, continuously to see how important it is to do this well, to do community-based research, and why those approaches and principles and equity and inclusion and those things just create something that we're working on that's just so rich and can move forward. So I'm going to pass it back to our audience. Does anybody have any other questions, comments? There's a lovely comment in our chat here that saying it's just fantastic and informative, and just a bonus to see migrant women engaged and participating and being heard in the context of this research. Anybody else? I have one last question if nobody else. I could talk all day, so I'm very aware. But one of the things that has struck me so much is, you know, in this building capacity, and I guess in our last minute, if you had one or two messages for up and coming researchers and or new, you know, or students, or you know, just what is just if you had like a couple of bullets about things to really consider for folks who would like to participate and be useful and contribute to what you're working towards, what would be your one or two messages for them? No pressure. If you have any, you know, just in our last minute of wrap up.
Well, I think that what just kind of jumps to my mind is, and this has sort of followed me along just my career, even just starting from, you know, as a public health nurse, and just really talking to people. I think just really talking to people, not only just within your discipline and within, you know, your community of profession, but outside of your profession as well. I think it's so important, you know, just to really get the different understandings and get the different, the various interpretations even of what's going on in the world, around the area that you are really curious about. And I think that just really builds upon, you know, who you are and what you're interested in. And just that knowledge exchange is always an exchange. So I think that is what I would say is a really important part of your work.
Yeah. I think I would say for up and coming researchers is get to know us. Come to our events. Check out our socials. See what we're thinking about, what we're doing in the community. Talk to us, and just like I said, get to know us. and let us have an opportunity to get to know you, because I think that'll help move the research along. It's just reciprocal. If we know who you are, what you're doing, and we know you've taken the time to get to know us as well, then I think that's a really fantastic way to be able to move forward and embark on some of these research opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, just being open. I think just really being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. Yeah, I think that would just be the second thing that pops into my head.
Well, that's time. I think that was a fast hour. So I just want to, say thank you to Diana and Shahin for taking the time to come and talk with us today and share everything that you're learning, and with that honesty and commitment of what it's like and why it's so important. And so, yeah, on behalf of us all, thank you for a fabulous talk, and thank you everybody for coming today. We will circulate the link. It'll be available at the Capacity Research Unit website, and yeah, please let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to do that, to have more conversation. And I guess we could just pop some emails in the chat. I can, Shahin, do you want to put yours in the chat quickly, or we can put Capacity, and you can find details for this at capacityresearch.ubc.ca, and then you can link in with us and we can make things available through there. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend, and good luck to all of you in the various work that you're doing, and keep doing it. It's a great community to be part of, and thank you for including me and for being part of the day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks
for coming out, everyone.